May 17th, 2025. Well, this one I want to get into the something that's kind of got me a bit upset, let's say. And basically, just a short time ago, a week or two ago, there was a meeting before this subcommittee, I guess it was, of or at least it was a roundtable associated with the House Oversight Committee, with Representative Luna was in charge, and I guess as also representing Burchett and Burleson were there representing the congressional side, and there were a variety of people from this UAP Disclosure Fund, I guess, group led by at the time Lue Elizondo, who's since resigned, I guess, as the head of the group, and now Christopher Mellon is leading it. And anyhow, it was an interesting discussion from various people, um, from the on the prestigious end. Dr. Avi Loeb, who's a professor emeritus, I guess, of the former head of the astronomy department at Harvard, uh, to a variety of other people, a retired admiral who'd worked with NOAA, and of course, Dr. Eric Davis and some other people. I'm not going through all the list of all the people that are there. The supposedly UAP experts are people who've been working the field for some time. And this was let them present what they knew about the subject and so forth. Well, one thing, I think there's one big glitch in the whole deal is this, which has got me a bit upset the way people are reacting to it. And that is that Lou Elizondo at one point basically showed a picture which he said had been taken by a pilot, and basically said this is unvetted. And but if somebody were to have a thing which might give the appearance of being a UAP, where would you send this for evaluation? That there ought to be a way of people putting things like this forward. And of course, later on, all of Mick West and a bunch of other people who were in the debunking team were able to identify some crop circles which seemed to match the images there. It seems to match what would appear to be the shadow part of it very well, which I think they said was not a shadow anyhow to begin with. And the other part looks like maybe something like another circle, or it could be an object above the circle. I would agree that this is definitely not definitive of anything other than it probably was what the debunkers say it is. That's not the point I'm making here. The point I'm making here is that this has then turned into a big gotcha on Lou Elizondo, as if somehow that he'd committed some fraud on somebody. And it's almost like he said, "This is it. This is the proof that UAPs are real. Take a look at this. This is definitive." That's not what he said. He said it was unvetted, and so it's just an example, basically, of what somebody might come up with. And remember, most of what people will come up with are going to be explained away. I think the bulk of things that might appear to be this will, in fact, like the whole drone issue, and I put drone in quotes here, over New Jersey. Um, Most of the objects that people were seeing when the thing turned into what sometimes is referred to as a flap, well, most of those probably were just aircraft flying overhead. But some of them weren't, okay? And some of them were flying at low altitude over Picatinny Arsenal. And they seem to be a little bit too big for hobbyist drones. So similarly here, but the point is most things but the point Elizondo was trying to make out was that you need to have a place so people can put these things forward to be evaluated. And they've turned this into like that he's really been discredited or something, and even all the UA, so many of the people who are in the UAP disclosure side of things are like start turning on him over this. Now I would agree that probably considering he had a previous incident of this sort and some other event that in the future I would recommend he not show any still pictures. Basically, let somebody else show the still picture because but the point of the he was making is a valid point. We need to have a system where ordinary civilians can come forward to have these things evaluated. I think would be helpful, perhaps. But but I think that there's a whole idea. Then they get into all the scuttlebutt that people have thrown at them over the years, trying to make out that there's something fraudulent or something this or that. And I think this to be just completely on the outrageous side. But if you like these videos, please give me a like, subscribe, and click the bell for notifications. Or you can follow me, of course, on Rumble, and the address in the description below. So yeah, and this is where I'm kind of coming down on this. Now let's understand that one of the whole bugaboos about the whole deal is trying to discredit the whole issue. What the people saying he wasn't leading some study in the Pentagon, or that this or that. And this is all totally wrong. And to some degree, the way it came out probably is responsible for this. What one has to understand is that Lue Elizondo was brought into the OSOP program near the end as a security person, as they were trying to turn it into a special access program, and only that effort failed. Okay, and at some point when most of the funding ran out, the Dr. James Lukatsky, who was the leader of the OSOP effort, basically, I guess, was moving on to something else, handed this off to Lue Elizondo to continue the study to the degree he could with the funding and prerogatives he had as a manager level person, GS-15, in the Pentagon, which he has had a purview to investigate various security issues relating to military personnel and bases, as I understand it. And so within that context, he then did lead a study of the UAP subject, and this is the truth. Now, if the question is, was this a program that was, I don't know. I mean, it isn't necessarily that the Pentagon itself was for this as a whole, but there's certainly elements that were, and apparently were operating. At least nobody's been charged with any malfeasance in terms of the use of funds and efforts. So I guess he did have a right to do the investigating he did. And as he said, and many statements were made in various appearances he made over time, and including that History Channel TV series and everything, that he was restricted to investigating with respect to military personnel and bases and stuff, which he did. So the whole thing is that this whole thing is, um, misleading, is wrong. Now, there was always the classic, confusion between OSOP and ATIP and all that sort of thing. And I think the original New York Times article did maybe didn't fully characterize things as accurately as one might have hoped if one wants to be very critical about it. But on the other hand, he didn't write the article. He wasn't the editor of New York Times. I mean, this is the things that can kind of happen. So I think but when you consider where we are in disclosure today compared to where it would be if Lue Elizondo had just stayed in his job in the Defense Department and never had come forward. Gee, that's been what, 8 years ago now, almost at 7.5. I mean, it's been a long time. We wouldn't be nearly where we are today. I mean, that was a major. He was a major contributor to the effort that was in, and for people to try to trash him over some minor, let's say, political faux pas at worst. I mean, to me, it was a typical political setup like you see all the time. I mean, I just saw an outrageous headline tonight where it said basically that talking about all the money and investment that President Trump came back from his trip to the Middle East to invest in the United States, that he chose money over lives because he didn't go to Turkey for what would have been a failed negotiation. It's absurd. His presence in Turkey would have changed nothing because the Ukrainian and Russian positions are so far apart. They're, as they say in set theory, disjoint. Okay, so let's. So, at any rate, I don't want to. This, whether what you think about President Trump is irrelevant to this. What I'm trying to say is this is the way politics is played: is taking something that totally out of context and turning into something it isn't. And that's what these debunker people are doing. And I think all the people that are for UAP disclosure ought to be united and push back on that and support Lue and not sit around and quibble over this stuff. I think sometimes the disclosure effort is its own worst enemy. Let's put it this way. If I was heading security on what we call the program or the legacy program, I would be laughing my head off at the behavior of these people. I mean, isn't it so easy to mess these people up over nothing? At any rate, So, I just, that's what I got to say about that. And I just thought I'd use this video as an opportunity to kind of, you know, have my say on it. And I think that that we do have to be careful, though, that we don't get off track here. And I do think Burleson ought to be a little bit careful if he's getting into this issue about the descriptions of the extraterrestrial beings that are allegedly been seen by people, and probably have been. But the point is, I think you have to be very careful about that sort of thing too. That is what, like, as they say, experiencers have reported, and I think it's common. Not surprised by any of it. If you're unfamiliar with the subject, you would have. But the point is, right now, what we're really trying to get to is what the government knows about it and why these programs have not been reported properly to Congress and the public to some degree. After all these years, I think it's time that we can kind of admit that there is something going on there that's and then we want to get the scientific community involved in it on a level that isn't so compartmentalized and classified, so that maybe we can have a better understanding of what's going on. Anyway, that's kind of the gist of all the disclosure effort, and I think that it seems to be valid. Um, so, at any rate, I'll be wrapping this up for now, and we post this on YouTube and Rumble as always. And the address of my social media accounts are in the description below. And you can post most frequently on X between videos. So I'll be ending this one for now. Until next time.